Can we stop going on about Manchester United? There's more context, but all of the media still, all of the podcasts, all of the radio shows are taken up by a team who are 14th in the Premier League. Man United are probably still the biggest club in England in terms of a fan base, and that is obviously because they were the biggest club in the 60s, they were the biggest club in the 90s, the 2000s, and maybe even the 2010s. Commercially, they're nowhere near it at the moment, especially compared to European giants like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and even someone like a Man City whose revenue is so much higher than Man United's at the moment. But yeah, fair enough. A lot of people in the UK who aren't even from Manchester are big Man United fans. But why do we have to speak about them constantly? I 100% got it when Alex Ferguson left, David Moyes was there. David Moyes was a huge talking piece because it was the post-Ferg era. He didn't do too well. Van Gaal came in. Mourinho came in, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, an ex-player, came in. They were still relatively competitive in the Premier League. They were challenging for top 4. Every now and again they'd have a flutter on the league, but not really. But you know what? Fine, let's talk about them. But now, when they're 14th, it's not even fun to hate watching Man United anymore, because it's got to the point where you expect them to either draw or lose. When they beat Ipswich the other day, it felt like a big thing that Manchester United beat Ipswich Town. Do we realise in the last couple of years, Man United had a 30-game unbeaten streak in all competitions at home? They had a 40-game unbeaten streak in 2016 until 2017 at home, and now we're watching them. They lost to Crystal Palace, they lost to Bournemouth, they lost to Newcastle, they lost to Brighton, they lost to all of these teams at home, but they're still seen as a big talking piece. This video is inspired by 3 things. 1, obviously, dislike for Man United. 2, the Stick to Football podcast, where every title, and I get they're ex-Man United pros, some of them, but they're still discussing Man United and how poor they are. And 3, it's a notification I got on my phone from The Athletic that Garnacho paid for the team dinner. I don't subscribe to Man United, I subscribe to the Premier League, I subscribe to Leeds United, Liverpool, and a couple of more teams in Europe that I want to listen to news to, and somehow that is a breaking news story. So they have put that as a massive story because they know there's so many people who will click it. And yes, this is the answer, isn't it? Because there are so many people who want to digest this media, because there are so many Man United fans, that all of these shows will constantly be doing it because it works, doesn't it? TalkSport get the clicks when they talk about Marcus Rashford for the 100th time. It got to a point Marcus Rashford had done nothing for Man United about a year and a half, 2 years, yet he was still seen as a massive talking piece. There are 10, 15 better attackers for England than Marcus Rashford. However, we're still acting like he's this absolute god of football that we need to discuss. I'll be honest, I do find it interesting with the Ineos stuff because it's ridiculous, isn't it? They have to cut costs, but yet they're reducing food at the canteen for the staff. I mean, it is a ridiculous situation, but on the pitch, why are we still talking about them? They're a really poor team, but my issue actually isn't just mainly people talking about Man United and having to hear about them. It's the fact that a lot of people moan and moan and moan about how the Premier League isn't what it used to be. It's not the same standard, it doesn't have the same feel to it. But let's look at that, because why are TalkSport not talking about Nottingham Forest on the daily? They're a team who were struggling to get into the mid-table of the Championship 3 or 4 years ago, and now they're potentially qualifying for the Champions League. Why are Sky Sports and the Overlap podcast and all of them not talking about the job that Iraola's doing at Bournemouth? With the amount of injuries that they've had, and they also lost their star striker, they're potentially pushing for the Europa League. Of course, Liverpool and Arsenal get massive media attention because they're massive clubs. But what about Brighton? What about Fulham and the jobs that they've done consistently, being very good teams in the Premier League? Yet we are still focusing on how Manchester United haven't signed the right players. We're still focusing on how Man United don't have the same striker that they used to have with Rooney. And you know what I compare this to? It's very similar to music, especially in rock music. They don't have the Led Zeppelin band, they don't have the Beatles or Oasis, and people complain it's not as good as it used to be. That might be true, however, you have big bands, for example like Fontaines DC, which I'm a massive fan of. They should have won Rock Album at the Grammys, but the Rolling Stones did because people push out these nostalgic popular bands. And that's the same with United because they have a massive audience. All of these media stations, everyone will still talk about them. And it's funny, isn't it, because all of these ex-pros who are on BBC, ITV, Sky Sports, TNT Sports, a lot of them are Man United players because they were the biggest team in the world in the 90s and the 2000s. But it's the massive paradox at the moment because they need a job, and people like Gary Neville, Roy Keane are good in their own right. However, they get more clicks when they're moaning about Man United. I'll say it a million times, I love the Stick to Football podcast. However, I watched the one this week and I'm seeing Roy Keane go off on a massive tangent screaming at the others about Bruno Fernandes, about Harry Maguire, about other players in the squad. Is the intention from these pundits for Man United to become a better team if they're putting all those players' names in the media that they're awful? To be fair, I think Gary Neville is actually a big Man United fan, and I think he wants what's best for the club. I don't think he criticises them in a way that is massively destructive, but someone like a Roy Keane does, and he knows his word travels so far. So if he wants Man United to be successful, surely you just have to stop criticising these players the way he does. And it's also tough because in the UK, when you can basically have one of two games on a Sunday, they will put Man United on a lot, whereas they might choose a game like Newcastle and Fulham to not be available on TV, and that would probably be a better game than most of the United ones. I've just personally never really seen it before, of a team that has had such a fall off and still gets this much attention, because Real Madrid, Barcelona, when they had their down years, they would realistically go to at worst 4th in the league, so it was never 10th, 12th, 14th. But even with clubs like a Nottingham Forest, a Leeds United, who were in the semi-final of the Champions League and then less than a decade later were in League One, that seemed to get so much less media attention, despite someone like a Leeds having a massive fan base as well. Admittedly not as big as Man United, but still massive compared to probably 90% of the teams in the Premier League. It just feels like time has moved on from the Ferguson era, and that's not a bad thing because what? He retired in 2013. It's nearly 12 years since the man retired, and Man United have had a bit of success since then, but not really. But yet it still feels like they're relevant as ever. It's great watching them fail, and I understand they're a massive team. However, the Premier League is in a good place at the moment in terms of the quality of football. Yes, relegation is pretty much done. Yes, the title is pretty much done. However, everything in between is really exciting. Nottingham Forest getting to the Champions League when, like I say, they nearly got relegated from the Championship, even during COVID. That's a huge story that just seems to be getting a bit of a, oh, that's really fun, instead of a, wow, this is one of the best stories since Leicester. It won't end for the foreseeable because, like I say, the people on the TV, on the radio, and on these podcasts, they're Man United players. And that is because obviously it has the cycle of the pundits. In the next 10 years, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of Man City players on there and Liverpool players, but I'm just bored of it. And you know what, if you're a Man United fan, I might be wrong, you might be telling me to shut up and just mind my own business, but I'd like to know, are you bored of it as well? Do you want a bit of confidentiality? Do you want a bit of quiet just around your club to make it not look embarrassing really, because it is the laughingstock of the country at the moment? I think it would be good for them if they had the media attention of a Chelsea. Chelsea were doing terrible recently, and yes, Maresca had come under fire. If he was in the position of a Man United manager who had the same amount of money spent on him, it would be night and day, the media coverage. But let me know what you think in the comments about it. If you're a United fan, tell me, do you like the media coverage? Do you like that it's always going to be there? Or would you wish it went away sometimes? Or if you're just a neutral, comment your opinion below. But if you could leave a like, subscribe, that'd be great. But thanks for watching.